Okay, good morning. Welcome to Yin Deep Stretch. So a few props out. You may or may not need them, but probably a bolster or something about this size. So a lot of us have a pillow or a couple of folded towels, that sort of thing. A folded blanket's great. Just if you have two, that might be nice. So that way you can get the height. That's what we're looking for is something soft with a little bit of height. And if you sleep on a flat pillow, that's great, but not going to be great for for our practice today. Okay, so coming to seated, feet on the mat with legs bent, but you'll bring the hands back behind you. So you're using the hands to sit reclined. And then you can walk the feet away from you so there's still a bend in the legs, but they feel like they're kind of lengthening out. Maybe the toes lift, that's fine. Take the right ankle and then cross it on top of the left thigh. So you want to avoid this outer right ankle bone on the meat of the thigh. Just move it over to the left and then you can kind of hook it outside of the thigh. That's most comfortable. And then once you have the hands down on the mat, you're reclined, you can start to walk this left foot in a little bit. And that's where you start to get into the hip. So just go easy. You know, we're here for a little bit. And as you lean back, you'll feel like you can move that outer right knee away from you, keep the right foot flexed. You can close the eyes. This is just how we're starting. So it's like thread the needle, but we're seated and the chest is lifted. Eyes can close. Take a deep breath in through the nose. Back out through the nose. Two more like that. Deep breath in. Slow breath out. Again, one more time. And then keep going with this breath. So notice what it's doing to the body. It's starting to slow things down. We're practicing dropping into our practice as quickly as possible. So getting into the zone, which means getting into the body, linking the mind and the body together. So pushing away any distractions. And finding a sense of calm. Using the breath to get there, our greatest tool. And as you're here, you start to feel that right hip open a little bit more. And maybe it's tight and you're in a good place. You can stay there. If you feel like you're not feeling anything in the right hip anymore because we've been here for several breaths, you could start to walk that left foot in a little bit. But remember, we're staying away from our edge. So you always want to leave some room in the pose. You're not going as deep as you can possibly go. Last couple breaths. And then blink open the eyes if they're closed. To come out, we'll just start to extend the left leg out in front of us all the way. So you'll keep this crossing of the legs, and maybe you have to adjust this right leg so that it's a little bit more comfortable. Ankle bone away from the top of the thigh, right knee just wherever it falls. You're not worried about that. So now we're going to get into this right foot a little bit. You're going to take your hand, the fingers are going to go between the toes and you want them to come together. So if you have any rings, you may want to take them off. That's up to you. But just the way you would fold your hands, do that with your foot. So wiggle the index finger between the big toe and the index or the second toe, and then you'll just put each finger between each toe the best you can. So some of us have really tight feet. And then once you have that, see if you can get the toes all the way up the fingers. And then you can grab onto the foot like you're holding your foot as a hand. So my fingers are on the top of the foot and the heel of my hands on the sole of the foot. And then you can sit up straight and then you'll play around with this a little bit. So once you get the hand all the way down or as best as you can, don't worry if the toes aren't liking this, don't go too far. Spread the fingers as wide as you can. So you're essentially spreading the toes at the same time. So spread the hands as wide as you can with the fingers between the toes and see how that feels. And then gently release, keep the fingers in the toes, just release the hand so it softens. And then you can start to move the top of the foot. So as you grab onto the foot, move the hand forward and back, or the elbow can flare out a little bit so you can get a little bit more movement in the foot. And you're just moving the top of the foot, exploring that range of motion with the fingers between the toes. And then come back to neutral with the foot, wiggle those fingers all the way up to the toes, and then spread the hands as wide as you, or spread that left hand as wide as you can, spreading the fingers and spreading the toes. So a lot of us were wearing shoes that were really pointy for a long time. And sometimes our toes start to go over one another. What's great about this is we're reversing that, right? We're trying to get the toes to spread as wide as we can. Okay, you can release. That was a long time. Just rest. And then maybe you just do that foot massage again. So this is toe yoga, just moving the foot forward and back. And what's great now is we have a little bit different fashion where most of us are giving our toes a whole lot more space with our shoes. And now we're getting more control over our toes, which individually, that would be ideal, is to have control of each toe individually. Kind of difficult though, because we do wear shoes. All right, release the hand away from the foot and then extend the right leg out in front of you and look at the difference between the right foot and the left foot. Little weird. All right, so hands come back behind you, and then left foot comes in. So cross the left ankle on top of the right thigh and start to slide this right foot back in. And you don't need to go as far as you can. Just start someplace gentle where you start to feel the hip opening. And you can always take it a little bit deeper. But the hands are back for support. Chest is still lifted. Close the eyes. Start to feel your way in on this side. Noticing any difference from the first side compared to this side. And even though it might look different, you're trying to find the same opening that you did on the first side, which could be in a different place. Maybe this side's a little bit tighter or more open. So you just adjust for that. Come back to your breath. Also maybe noticing the difference between the feet. So you just opened up one foot, the top of the foot, the right foot. Left foot hasn't been touched yet. Can even move those right toes around a little bit and see if you can get control over, let's say, the third toe on the right foot. Could you just move that one? It's so hard. Most of us have control to just do like the big toe, but it is interesting to play with each individual toe. So when you're maybe sitting relaxed at some point in your day or evening, or even when you're going to bed at night, not a bad idea to spread the toes as wide as you can, opening up the feet. At least every once in a while, make that part of your routine. And if you feel okay here, you're welcome to stay here. But if you feel like the right foot wants to come in a little bit more, deepening that left hip opening, you can just go easy, still staying in a gentle place with the hip opening. And you'll blink open the eyes, slowly start to extend that right leg forward. It can go all the way forward. Keep the crossing of the legs. And maybe that left foot needs to come in a little bit closer, or maybe it's good where it is. You'll take the right hand, wiggle the 4 fingers between each toe, starting with the big toe and the second toe, and then getting the hands or the fingers all the way down to the base of the toes and the toes all the way up to the base of the fingers. So do that as best you can. And some of us don't have open feet. So if it's not happening on certain toes, that's fine. And if it's not going all the way up, that's fine too. And then from here, sit up tall so you can relax a little bit and then start to move the foot. Just go forward and back, the top of the foot. So my elbows flaring out, coming back in, and that gives me a little bit more action in that left foot, just kind of moving things around. And then once you have that, make sure the fingers are as deep as you can get them into the toes, and then spread the fingers wide as you can, trying to spread those toes as wide as you can. Breathing into it, especially if you're feeling any sensation here. And all of our anatomy is different. I don't think I've ever taught this on a recorded or virtual class, but I've taught it in the studio. And what I've seen in the studio in person is that some people can't get their fingers between each toe, and that's fine. And this can be okay. And then release the stretching of the hand, grab onto the foot, and just start moving it around again. So elbow flares in and out. And some people start to see a difference over time the more that they do this, where they get a little closer to getting the fingers between each toe. And then some of us have a whole lot of space between the toes just naturally. So this isn't a big deal at all. Okay, one more time with spreading the fingers. So get the hands or the fingers all the way down to the toes. Spread the fingers as wide as you can, trying to spread the toes as wide as you can. And gently start to release the hand. You can take the fingers out from between the toes, hands back behind you, extend the left leg, looking at the feet, seeing the difference. Now they look a little bit more similar. It's the color of the feet that changes when you do all that work. All right, so from here, let's come to hands and knees. And as you come to hands and knees, bring the knees all the way together. So they're touching, and then bring the feet all the way together. Toes are tucked. And with the toes tucked, you may want a block. You may not need one. We are coming into a toe tuck, but I'll show you with the block just in case. If you have a block or something with some height, could even be a book, you can bring the hands on the block, and you're starting to sit back onto the toes so that the hips are going back toward the heels, and it's up to you how much weight you put onto the toes in your toe tuck. Maybe the hands come to the thighs. Maybe you get the head all the way up over the heels. So see how that is. If you're like, this is a real bad idea, I can't stay here, my breath is going, then you just come forward as much as you want, and you take weight away from how much is on the toes. If you're good, then stay here. And if you do have the head over the heels, then we can play with the upper body. If you don't worry about this next part. Arms reach forward, palms face up, right arm on top of left arm, and then just grab for the shoulders. Elbows come down toward the chest. And with the hands on the shoulder blades, you're trying to pull the shoulder blades apart. Shoulders come away from the ears. So you're giving yourself a pretty tight squeeze, a big hug, almost like you were going to hug somebody else and try to crack their back kind of thing. You want to do a real tight squeeze, broadening across the chest. Staying with the breath for sure. Whole body needs it, especially those feet. But we're trying to keep you distracted a little bit with that upper body. Then reach the arms forward, palms face up, left arm on top of right. Bring the hands to the shoulder blades or wherever they touch. I'm trying to bring my fingers as close together as I can behind me. They're nowhere near touching. Elbows down toward the chest. lots of room for the neck. So you rise up through the crown of the head, shoulders move away from the ears. There's still a lifting of the chest, the hugging into the belly a little bit. I know this can be really intense for some of us with the feet, but we are starting there today. And you have plenty of space between the toes now. Remember, you can always come out if you need to, but see if you can stick with it. Use the breath to find that sense of calm. One more inhale. Slow exhale, reach the arms forward, bring the hands back down to the mat wherever you are. Set the block off to the side, untuck the toes, and then you can tap the tops of the feet on the mat. And then from here, knees come together, but feet stay a little wider than hip width distance. You may want to block for this. Most of us probably will. You could even use 2 blocks. So you could stack 2 blocks, one on top of the other like this, or you could take 1 block on the medium height or the lowest height. That's going to go between the feet. And you want it the widest way. So it's going like this between the feet, the widest way. So that gives you the most support for the hips. Take the hands, move the calf muscle out so that the knees have plenty of space to bend. And then you sit on top of the block or whatever's underneath you between the feet. Tops of the feet are on the mat, outer ankles hug in a little bit. And then you can just bring the hands to the thighs. So it's really important in this pose for the hips to be rooted down on something. So if you feel like they're floating away from whatever's underneath you, then you need to lift whatever's underneath you higher for that support. So that's how you know. And then if you feel like you could go down lower, then you can adjust the block. And if you can easily sit between the feet without anything underneath you, then that's your Virasana. You stay there. All right. So close the eyes, sit up tall. And then we'll come back to a shoulder opening, similar to what we did before. You'll blink the eyes, reach the arms forward, right arm on top of left. This time, eagle arm. So if you felt good with having the hands on the shoulder blades, you can do that, or you can bring the backs of the forearms together. Maybe the left fingertips come inside the heel of the right hand, but they don't have to. Shoulders move away from the ears, hands right in line with the elbows. And then you're trying to pull the shoulder blades apart here. So you can do that with the hooking of the arms, maybe the hands too. And if you want a little bit more, you could start to lift the forearms up. Just stay away from your edge so you're not doing the deepest shoulder opening. So it should be easy. You know, it's easy if your breath is steady and consistent. And how your heart feels. If the pulse is picking up, that might be an indication of going too far. And then bring the elbows back in line with the shoulders. Reach the arms forward, palms up. This time, left arm on top of right. Do what you did on the first side, either grabbing the shoulders or backs of the hands together, maybe even right fingertips inside of the left heel of the hand. Shoulders away from the ears. So notice if they want to crawl up, hands over the elbows. Stay here. Keep that width across the chest and the upper back. So we have this upper body opening happening, but you also have a hip opening happening along with the ankle stretch, top of the foot stretch. So internal rotation of the hips. Spine is long. So is the breath. And maybe you start to lift the forearms up just for the last few breaths. And slowly release the arms down by the sides. Bring the hands back behind you if they reach. And you can skip this part if it's not working. We're coming back to that recline position that we started with. So the hands can come back behind you, spine long. Maybe the hands are flat, or maybe you're up on the fingertips. Try to keep the knees down on the mat. So if they're lifting, then we've probably gone too far. Tailbone shifting forward between the knees. So it's not going back toward the back of the mat. And if you feel like you want to go down lower, you're welcome to go down lower. Some people can get down to their forearms and some people can lie all the way down on their back. You figure out where you're getting the best opening on the front side of the body. That's also the most relaxing. And if you feel like, you know what, I just need to stay up with my head over my hips, then that's your pose and you stay there. And we want to keep that lower back long. So if it doesn't feel like it's long, then you just keep shifting that tailbone forward. You might even need to lift the hips up to do that and then set them back down. Then you'll start to come back up. So if you're all the way down onto your back, then come up to the forearms first. If you're on the forearms, come up to the hands, and then we'll start to walk the hands forward, all the way forward, coming back to hands and knees. Take the props, if you have any underneath you, set them off to the side, and then separate the knees to hip width distance. Let's stretch the right toes back behind us. And that leg's been bent for quite a while. So just draw some circles with that right heel on the ceiling or sky above you, moving the leg around, keeping it straight. That should feel like a nice counter on the feet and the leg, on the right foot and the leg. Then bring that right knee in, step the left toes back behind you. So heel over the ball of the foot, and then you'll just start to circle that left heel around. You're going several times in one direction. You'll switch and go the other way, keeping it even. And hopefully having the toes tucked feels a little bit more comfortable now than when we first started. All right, left knee comes back in, bring the feet over to one side and come down to seated. And here's where you'll need a bolster or something like it. So you'll just take the bolster the wide way, scoot forward on your mat so that you can bring the bolster maybe a third or halfway down the mat. So there's plenty of space behind you on the other side of that bolster. And then you'll turn back around. So we're coming into a gentle back bend. Hips will stay on the mat. You'll lie down onto the bolster or whatever you're using for one. Here's the thing. You want the head to touch down onto the mat. You could even use a blanket if you want to. Arms reach out by the sides. So my arms, the back of my arms and my hands are down on the ground. Just the chest is lifted. Heads down. And if it feels like it's too intense with the head all the way down on the mat, that's where you can use a blanket or a lower pillow. You just want to keep the head a little bit lower than the chest if you're comfortable with that. So you're welcome to use padding, but if it feels okay to have the head all the way down on the ground, then you can do that. We'll all have a different height underneath the chest. We just want that chest to feel like it's lifting and spreading. Feet are down on the mat right now with the legs bent, just so we can start to adjust to this shape. So we take our time in yin. We stay away from our edge. And we deepen the poses if there's space to do that when the time comes. So this is an effortless back bend, meaning you're not doing the work. It's whatever's underneath the chest is doing the work, bolster, whatever you're using. Feet can stay where they are. You also have the option to extend the legs out in front of you. You can start with one leg, see how that feels. If it's fine, then maybe the other leg comes out. That makes it a little deeper. So if it feels like it's too much, then just walk the feet back in. And with the arms reaching out by the sides, some of us feel like we get a nice opening across the chest and the pecs, and maybe even the arms. And if it does become too much to have the arms out in a T shape, you can start to bring the hands down closer to the body. That's another option. And that'll be a little bit more gentle. See where you can soften a little bit. And we'll start, if you have the legs extended out in front of you, you'll start to walk them back in, just bringing the soles of the feet to the mat. Noticing how that changes things. And you'll roll over to your right side just enough so you can get the left hand down, slide this bolster or whatever you have out from underneath you, and then come back down onto your back. So you're lying flat on the mat. Feet can stay on the mat with the legs bent, or you can extend the legs out in front of you, whichever one feels better on the lower back. But it's always nice to feel the difference in height after a back bend like that when you're using props to find the lift. And then feel the difference in the spine when you lie down on a completely flat surface. The natural curve of the spine, finding its shape again. And start to walk the feet in, bending the legs, feet and knees together. Just lift the knees over the hips and then grab onto the knees, keeping the knees and the feet together. Stir the pot. So move the knees together in a circle in one direction. So knees and feet stay together the whole time. And switch the direction, go the other way. Set the feet back down onto the mat, roll over to your right side, use the left hand to bring yourself back up to seated. And once you come to seated, let's take the bolster, bring it forward in front of you, and you want it to be the long way. So long way toward the top of the mat. And then my feet are on the left side of the bolster. So I'm just going to bring knees together, or knees bent. They don't have to be all the way together, but knees going toward the left. My right hip is going to come all the way up against this bolster. So bolster all the way up against the right hip. Legs are bent, left leg on top of the right. And then from here, hands go on each side of the bolster. So on the mat, press down into the hands, keep the arms straight and lengthen the chest forward so you're lifting it. And then start to open the chest to the right. It won't go that far. And then from here, come down onto the bolster or whatever you're using. Forearms will come down to the mat. Maybe the left side of the face comes down to the bolster, but if that's too much for the neck, you can turn and bring the right side of the head down onto the bolster. And then you just sort of plop down. So the elbows flare out and you're in a twist. Start to settle in. Close the eyes. And whatever's underneath you is what's giving you that length in the twist. You don't have to do any work here. If you have the left side of the face on the bolster, you'll want to lift the head and turn it the other way, bringing the right side of the face on the bolster. So that way the nose and the knees are going in the same direction. If you're already there, just stay there. And we'll start to walk the hands in. So they're down on the mat. Press into the hands to lift the chest and the head away from the bolster. And then bring the right hand over to the left side of the bolster. And then we'll just turn around seated, bringing the left hand back behind you, coming even onto the hips. And then the knees will go over to the left. You'll be on the side, the left hip all the way up against the bolster, left hand outside of the bolster. So now the hands are back on the mat again. Legs are bent, really recline or really easily. It lengthen the chest forward. So straighten the arms. You get that length in the spine and then start to point the chest to the left, bending the elbows, slowly lying back down on the bolster. And then once you get close enough, decide right side of the face onto the bolster, elbows and forearms, arms resting out wide on the mat, or you can bring the left side of the head onto the bolster. So see which one feels better. Start to settle in. And you may find that you feel okay with the neck in one direction, but not the other. And that's fine. Or maybe over time in the pose, you want to bring the head back so that the left side of the face is resting on the bolster. You do that whenever you want to. And start to settle in, feeling that length in the spine here in the twist. If you have the right side of the face resting down on the bolster, you'll want to turn the head so the left side of the face is resting, keeping the nose and the knees going in the same direction. Feeling a little bit of a release on the neck, taking the twist away from the cervical spine. We'll slowly start to walk the hands in so that we can press the upper body up and away from the bolster. You'll take the bolster, just set it off to the side, either side, doesn't matter. And you'll come to seated. So bring the legs forward out in front of you, coming to seated on the mat. You could prop yourself up on a bolster, blanket, or a block for a little bit more height if you want to at any point. So bring that right foot in. Step the right foot over the left leg. So left leg is still extended straight. Grab onto the outer right ankle with the left hand. Bring that foot over to the left, and you're working towards stacking the knees. Doesn't have to be perfect. Keep it easy and gentle. So this is half shoelace. You can stay right here, half Gomukhasana. You could also bend the bottom leg and see how that feels. Make sure you're even on the hips. And if you feel like I could do this if my hips were higher, then lift the hips up and sit up on a block or something for elevation. And if it's too much, that bottom leg just comes back out. And if the knees aren't having this, then the sole of the right foot inside of the left leg. So those are all the options for where we're headed. All right. So hips are even, fingertips outside of the down by the side, sit up tall, close the eyes. Maybe you stay here, or maybe you start to walk the hands forward and fold forward. So you're putting some weight onto the hip opening. Be gentle and easy with it. Know that you have plenty of time to go deeper whenever you're ready. Eyes staying closed is a nice way to feel your way into it if you're comfortable with that. And also where the feet are in space makes this a little bit easier, a little bit harder. So you can play with the feet coming out wider or coming in closer to the body. Also listening to the knees to make sure they're okay. So while you're in this hip opening, we're also opening up the legs. You may or may not be feeling some sensation there. As you stay with your deep breaths, you might find that you start to fall a little deeper into the pose without even realizing it. The body starts to calm down, especially the hips. They begin to release, allowing for a deeper hip opening. Start to lift the head and the chest, walking the hands in, bringing them to the sides of the body, leaning back to first extend the bottom leg if it's bent, and then the top leg. And staying reclined on the hands, bend the legs, feet wide to the outer edges of the mat, keeping the feet wide, just moving the knees side to side like windshield wipers. So there for a few minutes, that's a pretty big pose. Definitely want to give the hips a moment to readjust before we go into the other side. Windshield wipers are always a great counter pose for pretty much every hip opening. All right, so extend the legs out in front of you. Come back to seated. You might need to lift up the hips a little bit to find even on the hips. And then this time, left foot comes in. Step the left foot over the right leg. Maybe there's more space to grab that outer left ankle and bring the foot over to the side, working toward stacked knees, staying even on the hips. Maybe we take it deeper and we bend the bottom leg. Maybe we elevate the hips. Hands come down by the sides, sit up tall, take a deep breath in through the nose. Exhale into the pose. Maybe the hands come forward and you start to fold in a little bit. Just go part of the way. You know you'll fall deeper into the pose. So find a good starting point, because the best part really is falling deeper into the pose. So you want to leave lots of space for that to happen. Using the sound of the breath to communicate to the rest of the body that everything's okay. Starting to notice where you ended up in the pose. Starting to come out of it, walking the hands in, lifting the head and the chest, bringing the hands back behind you so that you can extend the bottom leg if it's bent, then the top leg. Still reclined, walk the feet so that they're on the mat wide and move the knees side to side, windshield wipers. Then we'll extend the legs back out in front of us. You can stay seated on the mat. If the hips are really tight, sitting up on a block, a bolster, lifting them up is always really nice. So keep this relaxed. Keep the palms facing up, down by the sides. We'll just fold forward over the legs, but you're not reaching for anything. So you can let the spine round, let the head come down. Start to fall in, staying away from your edge. Knees can be lifted away from the mat. So you could have quite a big bend in the knees, especially if you have any lower back stuff. You can bend the knees as much as you want and rest the chest on the thighs and fold in that way. So making this, in yin, we call this pose caterpillar, making caterpillar work for you. Not about form here, so you can forget the straight long spine. Keeping this forward fold as relaxing as possible. And knowing that you might be still seated pretty upright and maybe it's just the head that's coming forward, that's fine. You're still opening up the backside of the body. So anytime we fold forward, we start to feel ourselves fall deeper, almost like we're getting pushed into the pose. Gentle push. And we'll start to come out, slowly taking our time, coming back up to seated. Grab onto the bolster, take that, bending the legs. You'll just bring that underneath the knees, more the thighs than the calves. So if you need to back that up a little bit, you can do that. It's going the wide way. You'll come down onto your back. Make sure you have enough mat behind you so that when you lie down, the head's still on the mat if you're using one. And then we'll take a happy baby before we close. So you can bring the knees in toward the chest, separate the knees wide. You can either grab onto the backs of the thighs, calves, ankles, maybe the inner edges of the feet, or the deepest variation is the outer edges of the feet. So don't feel like you have to go all the way in. We haven't done a whole lot of this type of hip opening, external hip opening. So if you feel like it's a little bit much, then take an easier variation, maybe not even coming near the feet. Hips are going down toward the mat, eyes can be closed, but you want those legs wide. So if you can, knees wider than the torso, that'll get a little deeper into the hips. And soles of the feet pointing up. So if someone was looking above you, they could see the soles of your feet. Shoulders come, they're not reaching forward toward the feet. They're right in the socket. So make sure they're in place. Chest is open. Find the breath if you haven't already. So this is happy baby. It is a longer hold. Your baby's feeling angry, back off a little bit. Last couple breaths. Start to bring the knees in toward the chest. Give yourself a bigger squeeze. You can rock the hips side to side. Take a deeper breath in through the nose. Hold it at the very top. Exhale, Shavasana. Extend the legs forward, arms down by the sides. Bolsters underneath you. So it should be in the perfect spot to keep the knees lifted. If anything's touching the feet, like blocks or any other props, just move those out of the way. Close the eyes. Start to settle in. Feeling the space between the toes, all across the feet. Heels resting heavy on the earth beneath you. Knees propped up with the bolster. Thighs are elevated. Hips are touching down for support. Upper back also resting. Back of the head. Back of the arms and the hands. Palms face up, fingers curl. Inner arms lengthen away from you with the elbows heavy. Chest is open. Eyes closed. Jaw heavy. Face smoothed. Space between the eyebrows wide. Scalp is relaxed. Inner ears are relaxed. Eyes are feeling hollowed. Same with the cheeks. Tongue moving away from the roof of the mouth. And relaxing the very tip of the tongue all the way down through the base of the throat. letting all of the insides of the body completely release. And you'll start to wiggle the fingers and the toes. Then spread the hands and the feet as wide as you can. Spread all those toes. Make as much space as you can between every single toe. And then release the hands and the feet. Reach the arms overhead, extending the legs out in front of you, getting long. And you'll start to walk the feet in, bending the legs. You can bring the feet up onto the bolster if you want to. Rolling over to your right side, cradling the head and the arm, keeping the eyes closed, and just lying here for a moment. So you're on your back. It's nice to just roll over onto your side to slowly transition back into your day after this yin practice. Knowing that all your decisions will be different just because you took a moment to unplug. Use that left hand to bring yourself up to seated. Being mindful of any props, set them off to the side. Coming to an easy cross-legged seat. Hips can be elevated if you'd like. Sitting up tall with the eyes closed. Bringing the hands together in front of you and feeling that inner peace moving through you. Slight bow of the head, taking a moment to close your practice. Honor and acknowledge your heart and spirit, as well as everyone around you. Bring the head back up, blink open the eyes. Namaste. Thank you. Please continue to meditate if you'd like. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining.